That adds up to a total score of, when I say I studied for 3 months, I would say that even the day before the exam I was scoring like. So this video is going to entail the general tips and sort of the general methods that I used running up to my UCAT exam, in the hopes that you might be able to find something important in this and use it in your own exam plan. So I think the best place to start is my scores. So as far as my scores go, I got 590 in the verbal reasoning, I got 710 in the decision making, 800 in the quantitative reasoning, 730 in the abstract, and a band 2 in the situational judgment. So that adds up to a total score of 2,830, which put me in relatively good stead for interviews in the application process. And I managed to get all the interviews that I applied to out of UCAT University. So in terms of study methods that I used in the run up to the exam, this is the thing I purchased first, was the 1,250 UCAT questions, including a full mock. So I would say, as far as things go for this book, I would say it's a bit out of date just now. I wouldn't say it's still relevant, but I would say a lot of the sections are not really reflective of the real exam anymore. I think particularly the quantitative reasoning, I found in this book it was a lot harder than it was in the real exam. I did use this book directly before the exam, as in on the way to the test centre. Before the test centre, I was using this to sort of keep my mind going a little bit before the exam. In terms of the main method that I used, it was Medify. I would say if you are sitting the UCAT in 2022, I would say Medify, go for it all the way. It's not too expensive. It includes untimed questions, timed questions, mini mocks, full mocks. It's pretty much, you won't be able to go through all the questions. There's absolutely thousands of questions. I would say it's good as well because it has a statistics section where it can give you your sort of how long you took in sections. It can give you how well you answered questions. It can give you a score, questions you took too long to answer, questions you took good time to answer. And I would say it's relatively good. So in terms of timing of the study, sort of the study plan, I think the way Medify works is if you book it quite far in advance, if you buy your Medify subscription quite far in advance, it makes it a bit cheaper. So for me, I booked my Medify on the 1st of June. I sat last year, so it would have been the 1st of June 2021, and then I sat my exam on the 25th of August 2021. So it gave me about, give or take, 3 months to study using the Medify. And I would say the longer the time you have, the better. So when I say I studied for 3 months, I would say the first sort of month, for 2 weeks at least to a month, was pretty much just me familiarising myself with the questions. And I would recommend you do that with yourself, because going into the UCAT straight away on 100 miles an hour, going into real hard studying, you are just going to be a bit confused. The questions are not really like anything else you've done before, so I would say, with Medify particularly, do a lot of untimed questions across the start and familiarise yourself with what the different styles are. The next sort of general tip I can give you is learn the keybinds. So there's different keybinds you can use on the keyboard that will speed up the whole process, and you pretty much do have to learn them for the whole process. I would say for every section they're pretty much relevant. So I think off the top of my head, if you press Alt and N, and it works on Medify as well, if you press Alt and N at the same time, you'll move forward a question, Alt P, previous a question, Alt F to flag, Alt C for a calculator, and there's the number pad on the right hand side of the keyboards in the test centre, which you can get quite fast at typing the maths part up. In terms of a bit more of the decision making side of things and the abstract reasoning, I would say get a whiteboard and marker. So I used I think I just bought the cheapest one on Amazon, and it worked. It's particularly for the decision making, I would say, in terms of visualising things on a board in front of you. It was really, really helpful. Third general tip is consistency. So you will hear people banging on about it constantly, but the more you study, the easier it's going to get. The more sort of knowledge you're going to get about your weak points, the things you'll know that you're good at, and things that you'll know that you don't really need to study anymore because you've done enough of it. So for example, with me, I knew that the abstract reasoning, I'd done thousands of questions for it, so I knew pretty much all the patterns that had come up, give or take a few. So I also knew that quantitative reasoning was my weak point, so I thought it would be a bit wiser for me to focus on the weak point as opposed to the thing that I was really good at. So I would recommend sort of consistency with your study in order to build up your knowledge in the areas, and then focus on your weak points. You really have to drill into the weak points before the exam. So with me, I think before the exams, even the day before the exam, I was scoring like 600, like 500 to 600 in the quantitative reasoning. But I did sort of have some tools that I knew to use in the exam that would help me in the quantitative reasoning, and then I ended up getting 800. And I think I would put that down purely to me focusing on my weak points, really zoning in on the fact that I was not good at the maths. I would say the last general tip is focus on your mental well-being throughout this period. So as I said, I booked it in June. I pretty much did not have much going on in my life other than studying until the end of August. I think you do need to keep checking in with yourself. You need to keep meeting up with your friends. I know you feel like you should be studying, but you do need to keep meeting up with your friends, going out with your family, socialising, doing things you enjoy as well as studying. If you don't, you will get burnt out and you'll have to take a week off just because you cannot even bear looking at the questions. I would say if you have sort of mental well-being, sort of self-care mechanisms that you use in your own life, I would say keep these up. If you don't, I would say start to get onto them, because it is a very stressful point, and I feel like at points you will need something to sort of touch base with again. So I think for me it was meditating. I got really into it throughout the UCAT period, especially during the stressful times where I was doing almost a mock a day. I would say definitely get in touch with your mental health, because it is very important, especially on the day. I plan on potentially putting out a video in future about a study plan. So I made a study plan for myself, as I said, for this 3 months, and I think it might be useful maybe just to even compare to your own studies. And I also think maybe I might put a video out about the mental health on the day of the exam, because I would honestly say, in retrospect now, probably about 30% of my score is down to my confidence on the day, the mental well-being state I was in on the day, and I think it is something that's looked over quite a lot in terms of the exam. I think a lot of people sit the exam and panic on the day and then get a far worse score than they've been previously getting. In terms of general tips, that's the majority of the tips that I would sort of recommend. I think obviously each individual person is going to have a different plan, a different time period they need, a different method they're studying that they're going to use. But I think it might be quite important if I put my reflection on it out there so people can have something to go off of. What I do plan on doing is releasing a video for each section of the UCAT and a bit more specific tips, a bit more detail, as I feel like that's useful because each section is very different. And I've also got my own notes that I took throughout the entire process, I feel like I could release as well, because there's nothing sort of exam content wise in it. It's pretty much just all the stuff I was going through while I was studying.